September 1929. A businessman in Manhattan stands before a massive oak door of his local bank. He feels a cold shiver of intuition. The stock market has been climbing for years, but he senses the foundation is rotting. He walks to the teller and presents a simple paper passbook. Within 30 minutes, he walks out into the sunlight with $12,000 in physical cash tucked inside a leather briefcase. He is safe. He has exited the system before the world burns. Now fast forward nearly a century to the year 2026. You are sitting at your desk and you see the same red flags. Global debt is exploding and the markets are beginning to fracture. You feel that same survival instinct. You log into your retirement portal to secure the $200,000 you have spent 20 years saving. You click the button to withdraw your wealth. But instead of a teller handing you cash, you are met with a digital wall. A calculator appears on your screen informing you that after federal taxes and state taxes and a 10% early withdrawal penalty, your $200,000 has instantly shrunk to $110,000. But that is not the worst part. Your request is placed in a processing queue. The screen says your funds will be available in 7 to 10 business days. In those 10 days, the world changes. While you wait for a computer to approve your own money, the market drops 30%. By the time the digits finally hit your bank account, the purchasing power of your life savings has been cut in half. You did not escape. You were held in place while the building burned down around you. This is the fundamental difference between 1929 and 2026 that no one in the mainstream media is willing to discuss. The Great Depression was a tragedy of lost value, but the coming collapse of 2026 will be a tragedy of lost access. We have moved from a world of physical ownership to a world of digital permissions. Every financial innovation of the last 40 years, from the 401k to digital banking apps, was marketed as a convenience for you. In reality, these tools were designed to act as a cage. They are designed to prevent the one thing that the system cannot survive: a mass exit. When the crowd realizes the danger in 2026, they will find the doors are not just heavy, they are electronically locked. In this deep dive, we are going to peel back the layers of the modern financial trap. We will look at why your grandfather had more financial freedom in the middle of a breadline than you have in a digital skyscraper. We will analyze the specific mechanisms that will freeze your assets when you need them most. Most importantly, we will look at why 2026 makes 1929 look like a simple rehearsal. The gates are closing. It is time to understand how to move before the lock clicks shut. To understand the danger of 2026, we must first go back to the world of 1929. It was a time of devastating economic loss, but it possessed one feature that has been completely erased from our modern world: true financial agency. In the 1920s, when you owned an asset, you held it in your hands. There were no cloud databases and no third-party custodians acting as gatekeepers to your survival. If you had savings in 1929, they were recorded in a physical passbook. This was a small ledger where every transaction was written in ink by a human teller. Your relationship with the bank was direct. When you wanted your money, you walked into the building and the bank was legally and physically obligated to count out bills from the vault and place them in your hand. There were no suspicious activity reports and no daily withdrawal limits enforced by a central algorithm. If the bank had the cash, it was yours on demand. The same was true for the stock market. When you bought shares of United States Steel or General Electric, you did not see a flashing number on a smartphone screen. You received a physical stock certificate. This was an ornate piece of paper that represented your legal ownership of a piece of that company. It was your private property. If you sensed a market crash was coming in October 1929, you could take that paper to a broker and sell it. The settlement period was a predictable 3 days. No one could freeze your account because of high volatility, and no exchange could remotely disable your ability to trade your own property. The crisis of 1929 was a banking failure because the system ran out of physical cash. It was a failure of the banks, but not a trap set for the people. When the banks closed their doors, it was because they were empty, not because they were waiting for a 10-day processing period or a government authorization. The businessman who survived the Great Depression was the one who understood that speed was the only defense. He could convert his stocks to certificates, and his certificates to cash, and his cash to gold, all within a single business week. In the modern era, we have traded this speed for a false sense of security. We believe that because we can see our balance on an app at 2 a.m, our money is safe. But we forget that we no longer own these assets in the way our grandfathers did. Today, you do not own your stocks. Your broker holds them in a street name. You do not own your cash. You are a general creditor to a bank that operates on a fractional reserve system. The 1929 generation faced a storm, but they had the right to run for cover. Today, the system has been rebuilt so that when the storm arrives, you must first ask for permission to move. And as we will see in the coming sections, that permission is designed to be denied exactly when you need it most. The era of real liquidity ended when the era of digital convenience began. We have sacrificed our exits for the sake of efficiency, and in 2026, the cost of that sacrifice will be revealed. Every cage is built with a specific purpose, and the financial cage of the 21st century was built to prevent a systemic heart attack. After the chaos of the 20th century, regulators and bankers realized that the biggest threat to the global economy was not just a market crash, but the rational behavior of individual people. When people get scared, they withdraw. When they withdraw, the system collapses. Therefore, to save the system, they had to find a way to stop you from leaving. The first major bar in this cage was the creation of the 401k in 1978. It was sold to the American public as a revolutionary way to take control of your retirement while saving on taxes. But look closer at the design. The 401k shifted the risk from the employer to the employee while simultaneously locking that capital inside the walls of Wall Street for decades. You are encouraged to automate your contributions so that your wealth flows into the system every month without you ever touching it. But try to take it out. The architecture is designed to make withdrawal feel like a punishment. If you are under the age of 59 and a half, you are hit with a 10% early withdrawal penalty on top of ordinary income taxes. For most people in the middle class, this means losing nearly half of their purchasing power the moment they try to access their own money. This is not a tax. It is a ransom. It is designed to ensure that even if you see a crash coming in 2026, you will hesitate. You will tell yourself that the market might recover and that losing 45% of your balance today is too painful. That hesitation is exactly what the system needs to maintain liquidity for the big players. The second bar in the cage is the illusion of choice in mutual funds and exchange-traded funds. Most people believe that if they own an index fund, they are diversified and safe. But they do not realize that these funds are governed by something called liquidity gates. Under federal regulations, specifically those updated after the 2008 crisis, fund managers have the legal authority to suspend redemptions. This means if too many people try to sell their shares at once, the fund can simply stop paying out. They can lock the doors and tell you to wait. This is a fundamental shift in the concept of ownership. In 1929, you owned the asset. Today, you own a promise of an asset provided that the market conditions remain orderly. When the panic of 2026 begins and the algorithms start their downward spiral, those orderly conditions will vanish in minutes. You will log into your brokerage account and find that the sell button is grayed out or that your order is stuck in a pending status because the fund has invoked its right to protect the remaining shareholders. We have been trained to value convenience over control. We love the ease of automatic deposits and the simplicity of a digital balance. But we have forgotten that in a moment of true crisis, the only thing that matters is the distance between you and your wealth. The modern financial architecture has made that distance immense. Your money is no longer a physical resource you can grab and run with. It is a digital entry guarded by layers of legal fine print and institutional barriers. The trap is not hidden. It is written into the very contracts we sign every time we open an account. In the world of high finance, speed is the ultimate weapon. The institutions that manage your money operate in microseconds. Their servers are located inches away from the exchange floors to shave off a billionth of a second in execution time. But when it comes to you, the individual investor, the system moves at the speed of a 1980s bureaucracy. This disparity is not an accident of technology. It is a deliberate feature of the modern financial engine. This is what I call the 10-day death sentence. When you decide to liquidate a standard retirement account or a large brokerage position, you are stepping into a processing vacuum. Under normal market conditions, a 401k withdrawal or a mutual fund redemption takes anywhere from 7 to 10 business days to reach your personal bank account. First, your request must be verified by a plan administrator. Then the fund must sell the underlying assets to raise the cash. Finally, the money must travel through the automated clearinghouse system, which is a legacy network that still relies on batch processing. In a period of stability, 10 days feels like a minor inconvenience, but in the year 2026, during a systemic collapse, 10 days is an eternity. We have seen how fast modern markets can move. In March 2020, the S&P 500 lost 34% of its value in just 23 days. That means if you had initiated a withdrawal on the first day of the panic, your money would have still been trapped in the processing queue, while the market experienced more than half of its total decline. During the coming crisis, the infrastructure will likely slow down even further. As millions of panicked users log into their portals simultaneously, servers will lag. Customer service lines will hold for hours. Most importantly, the institutions have a legal backdoor. Many investment contracts contain clauses that allow them to extend settlement periods during times of extraordinary market volatility. They can legally turn your 10-day wait into a 30-day wait or even a 90-day wait to prevent a total depletion of their reserves. This is where the death sentence becomes literal for your wealth. While your request is pending, you are a sitting duck. You cannot cancel the request and reallocate to a different asset because the funds are in transit. You are forced to watch the value of your life savings evaporate on a digital screen, unable to touch it and unable to move it. You are witnessing a digital bank run where the bank has simply disabled the exit doors. Even your traditional checking and savings accounts are not immune. Most people believe that their money is sitting in a vault waiting for them. It is not. It is being used by the bank for lending and investment. If you try to withdraw more than $10,000 in cash today, you are already flagged for a currency transaction report. In 2026, when the panic goes viral, banks can and will lower these limits. They will limit your daily ATM withdrawals to $500 or even $200. They will tell you it is for your own protection and to ensure system stability. But the result is the same. Your wealth is no longer yours. It belongs to the system until the system decides you can have a small piece of it back. In 1929, the crash was driven by humans. Men stood on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange shouting orders and waving paper tickets. There was a human limit to how fast the panic could spread because there was a human limit to how fast a person could speak or write. In 2026, that limit no longer exists. The market is no longer a place where people trade. It is a digital battlefield where machines fight machines at the speed of light. Today, over 70% of all trading volume is executed by high-frequency algorithms. Những bộ não nhân tạo này không quan tâm đến giá trị của công ty hay tương lai của nền kinh tế. Chúng được lập trình để phản ứng với các thay đổi nhỏ nhất trong dữ liệu. Khi biến động vượt qua một ngưỡng nhất định, các thuật toán này đồng loạt kích hoạt lệnh bán. Điều này tạo ra một hiệu ứng thác đổ mà mắt người không thể theo dõi kịp. Imagine a scenario where a single bad economic report is released at 10 in the morning. Within 1 millisecond, the first algorithm sells. That sale drops the price, which triggers 10 more algorithms to sell. By 10:01, the market has dropped 5%. This triggers the circuit breakers, which are supposed to stop the panic. But in the modern era, these halts often do more harm than good. They compress the selling pressure into a tiny window. When the market reopens, the floodgates burst and the price gaps down another 10% instantly. While these machines are executing millions of trades per second, you are sitting at home staring at a loading screen on your mobile app. Your human brain takes seconds to process the news. Your thumb takes a second to click the sell button. Your internet connection takes milliseconds to send that request to the server. By the time your order reaches the exchange, the price you saw on your screen is already gone. The algorithms have already stripped the liquidity from the market. They are the first ones out of the door because they are built into the door itself. In 2026, we will likely see the first true AI-driven flash crash that does not recover. Unlike humans, machines do not have emotions like hope or loyalty. They do not buy the dip unless they are programmed to do so. If the data shows a systemic breakdown, every machine will try to exit at the exact same moment. This creates a vacuum where there are no buyers at any price. This is the ultimate executioner of your wealth. Even if you bypass the 10-day processing period and the 509.5 penalty, you would still be competing against a machine that can react 1 million times faster than you. The system is rigged to ensure that the sophisticated capital, the high-speed servers, and the institutional AI can liquidate their positions while the retail investor is still trying to remember their password. In the 1920s, you were competing against other men. In 2026, you are competing against light and code. It is a fight you are designed to lose. The most dangerous moments in economic history are not characterized by loud noise, but by quiet movement. While the mainstream media and financial advisors tell you to stay the course and remain invested for the long term, the people who actually run the system are doing the exact opposite. They are moving toward the exits while they are still open. If you want to know what is coming in 2026, do not listen to what the insiders say. Watch what they do with their own capital. In the final months of 2024 and throughout 2025, we have seen a historic wave of insider selling. Chief executive officers and board members of the largest technology and financial firms have been liquidating their personal shares at a rate not seen in years. These are the individuals who sit in the rooms where the real data is discussed. They see the slowing consumer spending and the rising defaults and the shrinking profit margins before any public report is released. When a founder sells $500 million worth of their own company stock while telling the public the future is bright, they are not diversifying. They are getting liquid before the trap snaps shut. But it is not just individual executives. Sovereign wealth funds, which are the massive investment arms of national governments, are making a profound shift. Data from the last 4 quarters shows that these funds are reducing their exposure to United States equities and shifting toward gold and physical commodities. The Government Pension Fund of Norway and the investment authorities of the Middle East have been quietly increasing their bullion reserves to levels not seen since the 2008 crisis. These institutions do not trade based on quarterly hype. They trade based on decades of survival. They are hedging against a systemic failure of the very digital cage we have been discussing. Furthermore, we must look at the Treasury market, which is the foundation of the entire global financial pyramid. In late 2024, the liquidity in United States Treasuries began to deteriorate. The bid-ask spread, which is the difference between the price to buy and the price to sell, began to widen significantly. This is a technical signal that the market makers are becoming afraid to hold the debt. Even the supposed safest asset in the world is showing signs of a heart attack. While this quiet exodus happens, the retail investor is being fed a narrative of permanent prosperity. You are told that artificial intelligence has created a new era of productivity that justifies record-high valuations. But the Shiller price-to-earnings ratio tells a different story. In late 2025, this ratio climbed to 39. To put that in perspective, it was 32 before the 1929 crash and 32 before the dot-com bubble burst. We are now 23% higher than the two greatest bubbles in human history. The smart money knows that a valuation of 39 is mathematically unsustainable in a world of 5% interest rates and $35 trillion in debt. They are not waiting for the crash to happen. They are creating their own liquidity now by selling to the public. They are using your 401k contributions and your automated index fund buys as their exit strategy. They are leaving the cage and leaving you with the bill. By the time the 2026 collapse becomes headline news, the smart money will already be sitting on the sidelines holding gold and cash while you are stuck in a processing queue. In 1929, the monster that destroyed the market was visible. It was called margin. Investors could buy stocks with 10% down and borrow the other 90% from their broker. This 10-to-1 leverage meant that a small 10% drop in the market would wipe out an entire investment. When the crash hit, everyone received a margin call at the same time, and the forced selling created a death spiral. After the crash, regulators raised margin requirements to 50%, and the world believed the problem of leverage was solved. They were wrong. Today, the leverage has not disappeared. It has simply moved into the shadows where you cannot see it. We are no longer dealing with simple 10-to-1 margin. We are dealing with 50-to-1 and even 100-to-1 leverage hidden inside complex financial instruments like derivatives and collateralized loan obligations. These are the dark corners of the financial system where trillions of dollars are bet every day. The foundation of this entire structure is the United States national debt, which has surpassed $35 trillion as of late 2025. This is not just a big number. It is a mathematical trap. In 1929, the government had the ability to intervene because its debt was manageable. Today, the government is the largest debtor in the room. Every time the Federal Reserve raises interest rates to fight inflation, it increases the cost of servicing that $35 trillion debt. We have reached a point where the interest payments alone are consuming a massive portion of the federal budget. In 2026, this debt will collide with the digital cage. When the market begins to slip, the shadow leverage will start to unwind. Unlike 1929, when a broker would call you on the telephone to ask for more money today, the computers will simply liquidate the collateral in a millisecond. This creates a massive demand for cash that the system cannot provide. This is why the Fed had to inject $75 billion into the repo market in late 2019 during a time of supposed prosperity. They saw the plumbing of the system starting to seize up. Imagine the pressure in 2026, when not one but dozens of large institutions face a liquidity crisis simultaneously. The Fed will want to cut interest rates and print money to save the system, but they will be trapped. If they print too much, the dollar collapses and inflation skydives. If they do not print, the entire banking system freezes. This is a checkmate scenario that did not exist in 1929. The most terrifying part of this leverage is that it is interconnected. Your retirement fund is likely invested in products that are used as collateral for these shadow debts. When the leverage monster begins to eat itself, it will reach into every 401k and every savings account to find liquidity. You will be told that your account is safe because of insurance like the FDIC. But remember the math. The FDIC insurance fund has roughly $125 billion, while there are over $10 trillion in total deposits. The insurance is designed to handle the failure of a single bank, not a systemic collapse of the entire cage. The leverage is the fuel, and the digital system is the match. In 2026, the fire will move faster than anyone can imagine. To understand the digital cage, you must see it in action. Let us walk through a hypothetical 48-hour window in October 2026. It begins on a Tuesday morning at 9:30. A major sovereign wealth fund unexpectedly dumps its entire holding of United States treasuries. Within minutes, the algorithms detect a liquidity void, and the S&P 500 drops 7%, triggering a market-wide circuit breaker. You receive a notification on your phone while at work. You log into your brokerage app to sell your positions and move to cash. But the app is unresponsive. Millions of others are doing the same thing. By the time you get through, the market has reopened and dropped another 10%. You finally hit the sell button, but your screen displays a message saying, "Order pending." The market makers have pulled their bids, and there is no one on the other side of your trade. By Tuesday afternoon, the panic spreads to the banking system. People realize that if they cannot sell their stocks, they need to secure their cash. You drive to your local bank. There is already a line of 40 people at the ATM. When you reach the machine, you try to withdraw $3,000 to buy supplies in gold. The screen flashes a red error message. Due to extraordinary market conditions, daily withdrawal limits have been reduced to $200 per customer. You take your $200 and realize it will not even cover a week of groceries in an inflationary spike. By Wednesday morning, the situation turns from a crash into a freeze. Major retirement plan providers like Fidelity and Vanguard issue a statement. They invoke emergency clauses in their contracts to suspend all outbound transfers and withdrawals for a period of 14 days to ensure orderly fund valuation. Your 401k is now officially a black box. You can see the number on your screen dropping from 200,000 to 120,000 in real time, but you are legally and technically prohibited from touching it. At the same time, the digital payment networks begin to stutter. Because banks are hoarding liquidity to cover their derivative losses, transactions on apps like Venmo or even standard credit card swipes start to fail. Retailers begin posting signs saying cash only. But because the ATMs are limited to $200, almost no one has the physical currency to buy anything. This is the 48-hour reality of 2026. It is not just that your wealth is disappearing, it is that your ability to interact with the world is being throttled by the very systems that promised you convenience. In 1929, the businessman had his $12,000 in a briefcase, and he could buy anything. In 2026, you might have $1 million on a screen, but if the gate is locked, you have nothing. The digital cage does not just trap your future. It traps your ability to survive the present. The true measure of a financial disaster is not the initial crash, but the duration of the suffering. In 1929, the descent was a long and agonizing slide that took 4 years to hit the bottom. Because the system was physical and slow, it allowed for a period of adjustment. People could barter and use physical cash and find ways to survive outside of the collapsed banking system. The recovery was slow, but the survivors were those who had preserved their principal capital early on. The aftermath of 2026 will be fundamentally different. Because of the digital cage, the initial crash will be lightning fast, but the period of being trapped will be indefinite. When the system freezes to protect itself, it creates a secondary crisis of confidence that is much harder to repair. If you cannot access your retirement funds for 6 months while inflation is rising at 20% per year, you are not just losing market value. You are losing your entire future. For the middle class, the 2026 collapse will be a wealth redistribution event unlike anything in history. In 1929, if you had no debt and some cash, you were ahead of the game. In 2026, even if you have no debt, your wealth is likely stored in a digital vault that you do not hold the key to. As the government and the central banks struggle to restart the engine, they will likely resort to measures like bail-ins or wealth taxes applied directly to your locked accounts. We have seen previews of this in other countries. In 2013, the nation of Cyprus faced a banking crisis. The solution was to simply take a percentage of every bank account over a certain amount to pay for the systemic bailout. This was not a tax you could vote on. It was a digital seizure. In 2026, when the $35 trillion debt bubble pops, the temptation to use the locked $7 trillion in 401k accounts to stabilize the national balance sheet will be irresistible to politicians. The 1929 generation suffered from a lack of money. The 2026 generation will suffer from a lack of control. You will be told that the system is being saved and that your accounts will eventually be restored. But by the time the gates open, the value of the currency inside those accounts will have been diluted by massive money printing used to keep the big banks alive. You will walk out of the digital cage only to find that your life savings can no longer buy the life you spent 40 years working for. The aftermath of 2026 is not just an economic depression. It is the permanent loss of financial autonomy for those who stayed inside the system until the end. The businessman in 1929 did not survive because he was a genius. He survived because he recognized that a door is only an exit if you can walk through it. As we approach 2026, the question you must ask yourself is not how much money you have, but where that money lives. If your entire net worth is behind a digital lock, you are not an owner. You are a tenant of a system that can evict you from your own wealth at any moment. The first step in any escape plan is to reduce your exposure to penalty-locked accounts. This does not mean you should recklessly close your 401k today and pay the taxes. It means you must stop the momentum of the trap. Consider redirecting your new contributions to accessible accounts, even if you lose a small tax advantage. Having cash that is available in 24 hours is infinitely more valuable than having a larger balance that is locked for 10 days or 10 years. Liquidity is the only hedge against a cage. Second, you must build a position in assets that exist outside the digital infrastructure. This is why the smart money is moving to gold and physical silver. These are the only financial assets that are not someone else's liability. They do not require an internet connection or a password or a bank teller to have value. If the digital payment networks freeze in 2026, a gold coin in your hand is the ultimate bypass. It is the only form of wealth that has survived every collapse from 1929 to today. Third, you must pay attention to the actions of the insiders. When the people who design the cage start heading for the exits, you should not be standing in the middle of the room cheering for the stock market. Diversify into hard assets like productive land or essential commodities. Ensure that a portion of your wealth is held in a local credit union or a smaller regional bank that is less interconnected with the massive derivative markets of the Big Three. The 1929 crash proved that wealth can be destroyed. The 2026 crash will prove that wealth can be captured. Every mechanism we have discussed, from the penalty walls to the algorithmic executioners, was built to protect the institutions at your expense. They want you to stay invested. They want you to believe that this time is different. They want you to be the exit liquidity when the smart money decides to leave. History is a cycle of expanding and contracting freedom. We have lived through a long era of digital expansion where everything felt easy and safe. That era is ending. The contraction of 2026 will be a brutal reminder that real wealth requires real control. Do not wait for the loading screen to tell you that your request is pending. Do not wait for the ATM to tell you that the limit is $200. Look at the patterns, watch the insiders, and most importantly, move before the crowd. Your grandfather in 1929 had the courage to grab his briefcase and walk out the door. You have the same choice today. The exits are still open, but they are narrowing every day. Position yourself outside the cage now while you still have the power of choice. Because once the panic begins, the only thing that matters is not what you own on a screen, but what you hold in your hands. The choice is yours, but the timeline is closing.